On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are talking all about Far From Home, episode 302 of Star Trek Discovery, right after these words from a sponsor that we have no control over. I hope it's not Trump.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast, the podcast where two lifelong friends do what they've been doing since they were 5 years old, talk about Star Trek, and you get to listen in. My name's Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
What is happening, Dave?
I don't know what's happening, man. I really don't. Life is weird.
Oh, yeah?
And, sure.
It's life, strange, life, and whatever. The Star Trek thing.
Man. Yeah. All that strange new lives. What?
Strange new worlds, man. Strange new worlds. Every day is a strange new world. Yeah. Star Trek Strange New Worlds is such a good name for a show.
Yeah, it seems like it was obvious somehow.
Yeah.
They should have already done this somehow.
It's been a while since we had a series that used that.
And then, as they whip out the split infinitive to boldly go.
Give me your over-under on whether they will use that intro in Strange New Worlds.
I don't think they will, but it would be cool if they did.
I think they will.
You think they will?
Because I think the entire thing about Strange New Worlds, at least as far as I've been able to glean from the little bit we know about it, is it seems like they're trying to make a Trek show for Trek fans that want old Trek. It seems like to me,
right? And they're trying to shut them up.
that is one way to interpret their actions.
They haven't said. I would be really surprised if they didn't just put it on CBS.
Oh, you think? And then use some crossover stuff maybe with the other stuff to maybe rope people back in.
Right. Well, the it's a thing that's the older Star Trek fans are still just honestly just bitching and moaning about streaming services because they think they're somehow scamming us, and I'm like, y'all are paying over $100 a month on cable. What's wrong with you? This is not cut your cable, guys.
If you're a Star Trek fan, this is a no-brainer, especially now, as much as we're getting.
If they put it on CBS, we've got Prodigy over here going Nickelodeon. Why not? They ran Discovery on CBS. I don't know what those numbers did. They ran season 1 on CBS to try to get some more people interested in CBS All Access. But I have to imagine they wouldn't keep renewing Star Trek and putting it out there if it wasn't doing pretty well.
It could be a loss leader trying to get themselves. They are now a service that many people pay for. Between this and Twilight Zone and Big Brother and things like that, they're starting to build a base of stuff that people really want to see, and so they're paying for it. And it's growing, and it's okay. I don't know that they're making money. Netflix still doesn't make money. It's whatever, 15 years in or whatever, they're still not making money.
Well, that's bad business practice, honestly.
I agree. I mostly agree, but they're also that's how they've stayed dominant. It's the new business of we worry about how valuable the company is instead of worrying about whatever.
Yeah, how far in debt we are.
How to make money, yeah. They go in deeper in debt and sell more of their company to the point that they keep staying dominant and relevant. And making content that is whatever. And honestly, that is not a business model that is sustainable. Right now, we're in the middle of this war that everyone's basically we're in the middle of a war. If all these people are countries, they're all deficit spending, right? And then whoever wins the war will dominate the space,
right? And by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen the headlines or anything lately, but there was recently an article or two that came out about why Netflix winds up canceling so many shows after 2 years, and it's just because too many people aren't watching them within a certain time frame. So if you think you might be into a show, you need to go ahead and watch it quick, watch it often, because the way the Netflix deals are, the price goes up. After they have a 2-year deal, the price goes up on everything, on cast, on production, everything, after 2 years. So that's why a lot of times they go, well, it's not worth it to do a season 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the Netflix model. So if you are interested in anything on Netflix, get your ass over there and watch it within the first 2 seasons.
Do you think CBS will change it? CBS All Access will change its name just to All Access?
No, actually, it's going to be Paramount Plus.
Oh, are they changing it to Paramount Plus? I think you may have mentioned that on a news episode at some point.
I may have, but yeah, it is Paramount and CBS have merged. So,
I know they started that now on CBS All Access. It's BET, Comedy Central, MTV, Nickelodeon, Smithsonian Channel, like all that stuff. It kind of annoyed me the first time because I was used to the app, and then I opened it up and I was like, I can't find Colbert anymore. It's not on the main page.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I've been arguing this all week, just like basically boomer Star Trek fans who are like screaming that CBS All Access is a scam run by Ferengi, and I'm like, I hate to tell you this. Actually, no, I don't. I love telling you this. Guess what? My wife and I use CBS All Access kind of all the time. They got a lot of great stuff on there that's not even Star Trek, and it is absolutely not a scam. It is just as legitimate as Hulu. It's just as legitimate as Netflix or Disney
especially
Plus. Especially now with Paramount stuff.
Yeah, now they've added so many things. A few things I like is the I love Colbert and being able to watch that any day. Like I love that. And the other thing is tuning out the news. Have you seen that? I'm sure it's auto.
Is it the cartoon?
Autoplay. Yeah,
but I hate that thing, man.
Dude, it's freaking amazing. Like the amazing part of it, like it's a cartoon called Tuning Out the News, and they literally make a cartoon show about the news. But it's like a weekly or daily show or something. So like whatever's in the news that day will pop up on Tuning Out the News, and they've already like created a cartoon version of these people. It's really funny. And sometimes they interview real people. So it'll be like a bunch of cartoons talking to one real person, and it's really weird. It's just good. I think it's good comedy, but
we will agree on it as weird. I have not found it to be good comedy.
I have, man. There's an episode where one of the guests gives them Rudy Giuliani's phone number, and they call Rudy Giuliani directly, and they there's a club that he's known to hang out in the in Washington or whatever, and they give him this big thing about how they're calling about a stain he left on a chair.
Oh,
and they just won't leave him. They're like, yeah, it's horrible. They're saying this thing's it's a nice old chair. It's going to have to be completely reupholstered. We're and just trying to ask him for money. And he's like, yeah, well, have them send me a bill. I don't know. It's just really, it's insane that they like actually basically prank called Rudy Giuliani. It's pretty bold show and funny. Anyway. Let's I'm kind of a news junkie too these days, so
right.
Like it's cool to me that they're like the fact that they animate a show, whatever process they use, it's good, it's pretty good animation, and it's like they animate the show the day it's happening, you know? Right. That's impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive. I honestly just wish it was funnier. I haven't laughed once. But
oh man, I'll laugh every time. Okay,
Let's
dive into the show. We have
sorry.
No. That's our proto news segment. That it wasn't really much news, just like randomly discussing CBS All Access, which is it germane to the topic. But
sure,
let's talk about Star Trek Discovery, season 2, episode 3. No, season 3, episode 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Strike that. Reverse it. I did not like this episode as much as last week, but last week was a super high bar.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't like it as much. After last week, I noticed a couple. There were conveniences from last week that I didn't really register, but there was like specifically one that I thought was kind of fun. Was that they're like, I know it was like specifically really like brought up to like bash the show, but now because of this episode, I think it holds a little more water, I guess. But they were like, you know, what are the chances in the entire universe that Michael appears, in 930 years in the future and just happens to bump into like another black person in the middle of the galaxy? And yes, it was a criticism of the wokeness of the show, apparently. But
screw that!
Yeah,
screw that! Like, then in this how many Star Trek episodes have we had where a white person bumps into a white person? Like, and who
absolutely.
says that like white and black, the ratio of white to black in all alien races is all similar? And that,
right,
like, that's so stupid.
It is. But here's where I'm taking it. I do agree that it's interesting and silly that, and it's a convenience that she would like bump into anybody.
Sure. But that's the convenience we have to accept in a show about people running around the galaxy.
But, you know, in this episode, we have Tilly and Saru go to this bar, and like the big bad guys who come in are just a bunch of, you know, white and black folks. Like, it's just weird. It's like, we're like 1,000 years in the future, and there's just still a bunch of just humans hanging out.
Yeah, no,
like,
that's a criticism I have of the show. But, I don't really think of it as a criticism, I guess. It doesn't really bother me because the Federation spread all over the universe and spread its Terran seed everywhere. That
wily Terran seed.
That wily Terran seed, they're a virus, man. Agent Smith said so. They went all over the galaxy, spreading around. The dilithium, apparently the burn happened. I don't mind that there's a lot of humans or humanoids, because some of those people in the strike team that the thugs that are working on the settlement or whatever, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Those guys. I forget the main guy's name. You remember? I meant to write it down. I did not. The guy who was sinister in this episode, the villain of the piece,
Zara.
Yeah, that's right. The guy who was working with him, the black guy who was working with him was a different alien race. He had like weird eyes or whatever.
Red eyes. I couldn't see his eyes very well, but I'm a little half blind anyway.
Gotcha. My point is, I think that, but here's the thing that is interesting to me about that whole thing. Ariam died last season, and then they immediately replaced her with a human-looking version of herself. And in this episode, they had one of the more interesting looking crew members is one of the only deaths on the ship. I think they are trying to simplify production of Discovery. Whereas like they were like, Ariam's makeup is too expensive and takes too long, cut it. And they
didn't want to get rid of the actress.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I think 100% they were like, we have to tighten up the budget on this show. We like this actress.
We've got 40 other Star Trek series in production.
Yeah, we got to tighten up the budget a little bit. It's not doing as well as we want it to, whatever. And I think they're getting rid of some of the more extreme makeup jobs, because that's an expensive and time consuming part of the production, and I think they're like just tightening it up a little bit, and so they're getting rid of that. And then do you see, you know what I'm talking about, the guy who's in sick bay? Detmer walks into sick bay and goes, oh my gosh, is he dead? And she looks over, it's just like some crazy looking alien that I think has been on the ship a lot, but we've never really known him. And it was just like, that's another crazy looking alien they just got rid of, and now the whole crew is looking more and more Terran, you know?
Yeah. So I do want to point out, like, I want to make it clear, I don't have a problem with people of color being on the show. Like, right. You know, I was 100%. Just pointing out something that someone else had said, and now we've got very, you know, modern day, like current day racial people. Like, that's one thing that's always bothered me about Star Trek. Like, if I were to do a remake of Star Trek, it would all be like
the
people
Matrix.
Dude, it would be indecipherable. Like, you would not be able to look at one person. Yeah, you would not be able to look at like one person in my crew and say, oh, they are white or they are black. It's like, nah, man, this is like 400 years in the future. Everybody's mixed now. There's no racism.
Well, except for racism based on interspecies, but
yeah, maybe.
Which that's whatever still happens in Star Trek, which is part of the allegory, I guess. Sure. But yeah, I agree, and that's kind of what they did with the Matrix, right? All of the people born in the pods were still generally one race, but everyone who lived on Zion was all mixed race.
Yes,
they were all sort of
liked.
Yeah, everyone was caramel colored. Which that was definitely an intentional choice and an interesting one, and probably more accurate to what the species will be in 500 years or whatever, or in this case 2,000 years or whatever. I guess 1400, something like that.
Yeah. So somewhat, yeah. 12
or 1300, I guess. Anyway, that is, so that's all our race talk for this week. Two white guys talking about race in Star Trek. Probably sound dumb.
I don't think I sound dumb, but hey, you guys are welcome to tell me I do.
I'm just teasing. So this episode, I like the Saru and Tilly and Giorgio stuff. I like them dealing with this guy. I like the Cal character a lot. This idea that there's just these true believers in Starfleet sprinkled throughout the galaxy. It's like a religion. Them wanting to go back to the old ways of Starfleet. I love that. I love all of that.
Yes.
The Stamets plot line drove me nuts. I thought it was the dumbest shit.
Me too. I was annoyed at Tig Notaro. I was like...
Now, Tig Notaro made me laugh multiple times real hard.
She made me laugh multiple times, but the thing that bugged me about it was, dude, she's got a spinal injury, and they, one, either can't fix it, or would let her, or two, would let her hang out in sick bay in a chair. I just don't buy it. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, she's isn't she the head engineer? Is it?
Yeah.
Or is she, and Stamets is a head scientist or something.
Yeah.
She's the head engineer. They're in a really bad situation, and it sounds like her back is something that's been giving her problems a long time. I don't think it's a spinal injury. I don't think it's a new spinal injury. I think whatever happened on the ship exacerbated a back problem she has, and she's like, my back's out. I'm going to sit in this chair and do my job. I get it.
I guess sick bay is full.
Yeah. So if she has a back problem that she knows how to deal with or can deal with, maybe she's just I got to get back to work because we're needed, But Stamets, no. Effing no. He is bleeding out. You're not allowed to go into a Jeffrey's tube. That's the dumbest thing.
Yeah. I feel like she could have been no, you're not going up there. That's an order.
Yeah, for sure. Also, anyone could have, I could have made that repair. We did not need a head scientist to do that repair. Watching her explaining to him how to do it was some of the dumbest exposition type.
Yes.
Star Trek that I've ever seen, where she's take out the relay. And he opens the panel. There's one big thing. It's a freaking light bulb that you pull out and put back in. And he's and he does put a lampshade on it where he's what am I, dumb? I know what I'm doing. I think they're just trying to reinforce the relationship that those two have forged, because those two have forged this sort of combative but clearly caring relationship, sort of a Spock McCoy type thing they're going for.
Yeah.
Them using their same kind of discovery tactics of the spinning camera and tense music while he's just pulling out a thing in a Jeffrey's tube he shouldn't be in. I was just this is the worst parts of Discovery right here.
Yeah, it wasn't even let's move a light bulb. It was hey, use your multi-tool to take off this panel. Yeah. And, oh, look, we've got a singular ribbon cable from a 1990s computer. Unplug that shit.
Take out the damaged cable. Replace it with a new one. I was what is a YouTube video? What is going on?
Put a new ribbon cable in from a 1990s computer
that you clearly know because you brought it with you. Okay.
It was real bad.
I say we don't talk about that plot line at all anymore, except when she called him, what'd she call him? Oh, crap. She called him like Bucko or something like that, and that was
Bobcat.
One of my favorites.
She called him Bobcat.
She's like
Bobcat? I don't know. I'm on drugs.
It's the best line of that segment. Probably the funniest line of the episode. There you go, Bobcat. Bobcat? I'm on drugs.
But like, I liked the bits where she's talking to him and she's like, helpless is a shitty feeling, but it's not forever. It doesn't make you any less capable, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like him going up into the Jeffries tube was stupid. The ribbon cable was stupid.
It could have easily been written that he was like in the Jeffries tube when like I am rewriting this episode right now. He's in the Jeffries tube when all this goes down, right? Something happens that he's in there already, and he has to make a repair, fight through the pain to make a repair to get out to get medical care. Yeah. And like he's the only one that can do it. Like that fixes this issue of just like, he's just a dumbass who's like way too proud, which I guess that's what they're going for, teaching us that he's way too proud. Like, it's a character building moment, I guess, but it's like, how did you make it this far in Starfleet doing stuff like that? Like, that's dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I am done talking about that segment. We should have probably saved it for a second, because the rest of this was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the rest of it. I really like, dude, friggin' Giorgio, like, just beaten ass and standing up to Saru and just like, I seriously thought she was just gonna like put the gun right to his head, like she was acting like she was going. Yeah, but then she just like flipped it around. She's like, all right,
yeah.
It's like, well, damn.
Speaking of that gun, Cal's death was one of the most brutal deaths I've seen in Trek. That was rough, man.
Yeah, to me, that was right up there with that poor Klingon bastard in Star Trek 3 that Christopher Lloyd killed, who's just like, he just shot him and like, he's just screaming in pain as he slowly disintegrates.
Yeah.
From the inside out. Like,
it reminded me back in the day when the disruptors were like really a scary and painful death.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But this was even worse. Like, because even after that's the thing. He didn't disintegrate. He falls on the ground after like a bunch of fluids fall out of his face. He falls on the ground and is still writhing in pain as his like a huge burn hole in his chest. Like, I was like, that is rough. Yeah. That is really rough.
Yeah. But I mean, if we didn't get it from that, Zara winds up, promising to make their children die gasping. Like, yeah. Jeez, dude, you are a sack of shit.
Talk about a mustache twirling villain.
Yeah, can you just have Giorgio kill him, please? So this is who we are, isn't it?
Yeah, them not killing him kind of bothered me.
This is who Kirk was.
I definitely understand what they're going for here, and it's kind of beautiful. It's like,
yeah, well, it was who Kirk was, unless Khan was involved.
The whole Batman trope of just like fighting through every bad guy and kind of like dropping them off roofs and snapping necks or whatever you have to do. But then the final big boss guy, you're like, I will show him mercy so he can come back next week. Like,
right. Well, the thing with Batman is, Golden Age, he kills.
Yeah, I know. There's complex Batman killing.
Yeah,
I know you have a lot to say on the Batman killing.
I'll just say this: Golden Age Batman, the original Batman, he killed often. Like some alternate universe future Batman kill, but honestly, like most of the time, Batman don't kill. He doesn't kill goons. He doesn't snap necks. He doesn't. Right. They've done some really cool stuff with that, but
for sure, I shouldn't have even brought up Batman.
No, you shouldn't have.
Arrow is the same thing.
Arrow is much more disjointed.
Like the idea that you fight, and then at the end you have a change of conscience. Like that's in a lot of these things. Like where you like learn to release your hate and rage just in time to let the big bad go, so he can return for the next fight. Like that's really bothersome. And what they're trying to do here is beautiful in that they're showing mercy, which is something the galaxy seems to be lacking. and they show mercy and say it's not our job to, they had this whole conversation about how the mining colony says, even though you guys have been gone, Cal's been telling me for years that we're still in the Federation. And then at the end, they say it's not our job to choose what to do with this man. That's your choice. And then because of their mercy, he turns around and goes, you can leave. And it's still not that merciful because they're sending him out into the darkness, which is, we've been told, is very scary.
Right. Like, full of the ice parasites. There's no way he's going to live. I mean, I'm sure we'll see him again.
100% he lives. Yeah, and he comes back in 6 episodes from now to be a thorn in their side. I'm
saying, they're thinking there's no way he lives. But he'll die afraid.
Yeah. And I did he was willing to send her out. It's it's the thing. It's this Starfleet thing or Federation thing of
forge a path, man.
Well, forge a path, but also this is what's their laws, and it's having some sort of law on the planet, and we're not going to conflict with their laws, and it's Saru following Starfleet protocol to some degree.
And saying look, you guys think we're this thing, and I just gave Giorgio this big epic speech. Yeah, no, this isn't our place to do it. He's been screwing with these people. So I mean, I get it. And, is about setting a tone in a hopeless society. I don't think Saru did the wrong thing, except I do.
Right.
But I don't agree with Starfleet most of the time anyway, so.
I think that Saru probably did the right thing, especially for what his stated goals are. But that's going to be the interesting tension going forward. And I think it's the most interesting thing about this episode. Well, there's 2 relationships I find really interesting in this episode, and that's Tilly and Saru. But the main one is Giorgio and Saru. Because going forward, we're going to have to answer the question, is Saru's style of captaining what is needed for the future? Because I think when this guy comes back, when Zara comes back, I think it's going to be I told you what we needed to do. Giorgio's gonna be we should have killed him, clearly. And you didn't have the spine to do that. I would have killed him. And I think we're already also laying groundwork for a mutiny here.
With Section 31.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I mean, because if they're going to restart the Federation, she's got to restart Section 31. There's got to be a Section 31 to govern what the Federation's doing.
That's an interesting idea. I think that could be where it ends up, but I
don't think she's going back in time.
No, maybe not. But I do think that she is going to. I think we will have some fights here over whether she should be in control or Saru should be in control.
Yeah, probably.
Because they're who is a better leader in this world? And her relationship with the crew member who has the breathing apparatus. You know what I'm talking about? There were multiple moments in this episode where she sort of sided with Giorgio on some things, and Giorgio looked like she was grooming her.
Yeah, which she just got regular series status, but I think she'll probably wind up going to Section 31.
Interesting. Yeah. So that show is still in the works? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we might get a thing where this ship goes, or the crew of the Discovery ends up going back in time again, or goes to a different time. I'd like to see them go to a different time. I really don't want them to go to...
I don't think they'll go back in time. I think whatever happens, they'll stay in this century.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested. Part of me really wants them to stay in this century, and part of me really wants something. I don't know. I could see them going, as I've said in the past, I think everything they do on this series makes everything they're doing on the other series a de facto prequel to this series.
Yeah. Did you notice Zara referred to the Vajraysh?
Yes, I did notice that, which he confirmed on screen that is the Federation. Yeah, I did. Which is interesting. It makes me want to go back and watch that short trek and kind of get a sense of how he's talking about the Vajraysh, because he's talking about the Vajraysh as if they're his enemy in that episode, or that short trek.
Yeah. It's like the Federation became Reavers or something.
Right. And we talked about last episode. The wonderful communications officer that we have. He was talking about how there were 2 Federation ships on his sensors, and I'm like, who are those people? And I feel like we're going to meet them, and they're going to be. You know, Firefly, you just mentioned Reavers. Firefly, how like Malcolm, sorry, rhetorical.
Yes, I am aware of the property I just openly referenced.
In Firefly, Malcolm, by the time they get to Serenity, the movie, he is in a dark place, because of what they've been through, and it has made his community smaller. I feel like that might be what's going on with the Federation. They're apparently no longer doing what they've always done, which is be out in the world, helping people and saving people. Because all these people seem surprised that Discovery is doing what it's doing, or that the crew is doing what they're doing. So, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I'm interested to see what the Federation becomes with Saru. And I like your theory there that like Georgiou will take on the role of sort of the dark side of the coin of the Federation, and she could help with Section 31. But I also find it very interesting to see what this version of the Federation that they're sort of reestablishing will be when it comes in contact with the Federation proper that has been around for 1,000 years.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see. I'm sure they'll be negative in some way, and Discovery will have to show them the light. But
yeah,
I'm very interested to see, and I'm pretty sure. I feel like they will use this as a jumping off point for Section 31 because I just can't imagine that they would want to take Georgiou back to the past.
I could see them taking them back to Picard or slightly post-Picard times, or even using this show as a way of visiting different times in Star Trek.
Yeah, time travel's been banned in this century.
Right. Post
the temporal wars. So, that's not to say they couldn't pull something out of their hat to make that happen. But, I think it would be a more interesting show if we had that dichotomy, if we had Georgiou just be like, yep, I'm in the 32nd century now with you guys, but you need me and I need you.
This, like with this show and a future Section 31 show running concurrently, both being in the same timeline, could be incredibly fascinating. And they're far enough removed from what's going on in Picard and what seems to like will be happening with Strange New Worlds, that those two universes could be so drastically different that like they wouldn't have to feel too connected. You could almost get like, this is new Star Trek. This is like really new Star Trek. This is 1,000 years in the future, the kind of hopeful thing we can do. And where Picard failed to give us the destroyed Federation that has lost its way, they failed. This could do that. Do you disagree? They failed. That's what they promised, and they failed.
I don't think they failed as. I think they were more successful than Star Trek has ever been at portraying that.
I don't agree,
because I feel like once a season they have like the Admiral who shows up and he's like in charge of way too much shit and he's lost his way, and Picard, damn it, has to show him the way. And then like it's like, oh yeah, they never go back to it, whereas like everybody else in the Federation was like, you know what, you were right, Admiral Forrest was a dick, we've all changed back to the way we were before. Like I felt like Picard at least had like, yes, there were several people involved here who had lost their way, and I felt like it went more deeply into it than they ever had. Even in DS9, which was amazing, and I love DS9, but I don't feel like, at some point they were just like, the entire Federation has been infiltrated by changelings. Cool. And then it just kind of went away. It was just like, okay, well, we've identified the changelings and now we're in a war. Okay.
Yeah, I just think that they didn't really do that. They also, like, it was one policy, which I agree was a bad policy. And it, in a way, it let them lost their way. It's two problems. It was just one policy. It's the policy against AI, and it ended up being a Romulan cabal. Like, those two things undercut everything else that they were trying to. It felt like they were trying to say, at least in all the promise of the show. I don't think in reality, watching the show. No, I take it back. It promised it even in the first episode. It's like,
but let's be fair, the show's not over. Like,
agreed.
They are still going back. Like, Jurati has to answer for her crimes. We are still going to be like looking at the Federation. Like, there was no way they were ever going to be able to wrap up everything that they set up with the Federation and how the Federation has lost its way. Like, it's not necessarily important to just like point all fingers and show every way that they failed and how the Federation looks after what happened with the synths. But it's important just to note that, like, look, this is what happens. All it takes is like one or two bad apples to like spoil the bunch. Like, this is how slippery a slope humanity, is just like, once we let fear in just a little bit, we are able to commit great atrocities in the name of protecting ourselves. So I don't think that necessarily they even owe us anymore. They've already given us more than Star Trek has ever given us on this sort of thing, but we still have another season coming, and I don't expect them to have wrapped it up by then. If they do, yeah, I'll say they failed on it. If it's done and they never go back to it, I'll be like, that's disappointing. Par for course, but it's disappointing.
Yeah, I expected more, and I do think they owed us more. It being a Romulan plot really undercut it. Anyway, I've basically said my piece on all that. I just think that, like, this show has an opportunity to really show us what a Federation can look like in the distant future after they've really had, like, the burn is way worse than what happened on on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, what happens when, an entire culture that is so, multicultural and ready to embrace everyone is suddenly like, so many of their people die and their way of life is destroyed. They can no longer use dilithium, which is like their main source of traversal, like all this stuff. I think it sounds like they're really setting something fascinating up. And so I'm very down.
Yeah. I just, I don't want you to get your hopes up too much because they know they have a fourth season, so they might not, wrap everything up in this season.
I'm not saying they have to wrap it up. I'm saying, like, right. I'd like to see an actual Federation that's actually lost its way and is making itself smaller and all the things I've said.
Yeah.
I feel like what Picard did basically was like, hey, it was all a lie. It was all a lie. There was no reason to get smaller. And that's the thing. The idea of it being a Romulan plot, the idea of the synths rebelling was also very fascinating. And that's part of and that's what we saw in the trailers, which admittedly was not what happened, although we didn't really know that. But, like, the idea of the synths rebelling is fascinating. And the idea of, like, they make a mistake, treat people poorly, those people rebel, the fear, and it's just, like, all internal. You know what I mean? It's all this, like, internal engine of humanity pushing, like, against itself and failing to be what the Federation's supposed to be. And instead it was just a misinformation campaign. Yeah. And that's I've had enough of that in politics.
And, I think there is room for more. They were certainly it certainly seemed that they've been setting up things with the holograms And, look.
Well, in Voyager.
No, I mean, on Picard, they had a bunch of holograms on Picard.
Yeah, but they did nothing with their rights or like their autonomy.
Again, that show is not over yet.
I agree. I'm just saying they've done nothing with it is all I'm saying.
Right. I'm just saying they have the potential to do that. And absolutely. What is Star Trek about other than hoping and recognizing potential and hoping for the best? Now, at the end of Picard, when they still haven't addressed it, I'm going to be pissed.
When you that was a turn of phrase you just used. You were like, "What is Star Trek except hoping for the future? Hoping for the future in that like the world will be better, not hoping the show gets better. That's not what it's supposed to be about.
Why can't it be both?"
It normally is.
I spent 7 years watching Voyager hoping that shit would get better, and it never did. That said, I understand that many of you enjoyed Voyager, and I understand that. This is my subjective opinion. Voyager sucked ass. But I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah, we're very happy you enjoy it. And
absolutely.
And do not judge you for enjoying it, but
no.
we're not big fans.
Teach me your ways. Sorry, I find us delightful.
I'm glad one of us does. Oh, man. So they mentioned couriers again in this episode. Zara is a courier. So it's, I realized that the couriers seem like they're a thing. I just didn't know how widespread that would be, but it seems like that is almost like that system of bartering and these couriers getting around the galaxy and dropping off materials to keep all the ships running, and possibly even the Andorians and the Orions, their little syndicate might be just like the main way the economy works in this new world. Mm-hmm. So just found that interesting. I don't know how far this world is from the other world we saw last episode, or worlds, but it's interesting that the couriers were kind of the main way things work here.
Oh yeah.
And it's basically capitalism now. Star Trek is just capitalism. And a really raw version of capitalism too.
Yeah. It's the gig economy in the future.
Courier, rearrange the letters. You get Uber.
Again, I find us delightful.
Okay. Also, I guess the whole crew stayed.
Actually, there's a note here on Memory Alpha. The USS Discovery's crew complement was established as 136 in Choose Your Pain, with 88 crew remaining and at least one dead following the transit through the wormhole. Approximately 47 must have decided to remain aboard the USS Enterprise in such sweet sorrow.
Okay, wait, 88 or 188? I thought they said 88. Like 100. Okay, so it's just 74 crewmen.
47.
No, they said... Sorry, I'm talking about in this episode. They said 74 crewmen. She said 88 crewmen are wounded or still our crew. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking she said 100. I was thinking they were saying 174. Okay, so 130 something down to 74. So yeah, some people left, and they did mention this episode. You could have stayed. Like so I just last season when they met her in that hallway, it seemed like her friends were staying. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna go with you and help you in the future. And then. I just didn't get a sense that the entire crew is staying until I think we started seeing the trailers for the season, and they were like, "We still need red shirts. We still need them."
Yeah. No. So far they haven't screwed up on their crew counts, I don't think. But it could be a Voyager situation where they start getting really wonky with the amount of people who are alive and the amount of shuttles they have. But
that's an interesting comparison because this is a very much a Voyager situation, except there's no home to go to.
Yeah, and which I prefer. Like,
yeah, what if Voyager had just stayed in the Delta Quadrant and just tried to sort it shit out?
start like like a Federation embassy in the Delta Quadrant.
Yes, dude, I freaking love that idea.
Dude, join. Janeway could have like brokered a freaking peace treaty with the Borg.
Yeah,
like found
absolutely.
more in common with the Borg Queen than like Picard ever could have. Like shit. Like
that sounds great. That sounds awesome. And then what would be really cool is just like we're talking about the Federation kind of encountering itself 1,000 years in the future and then seeing itself through a mirror darkly. I think it'd be very interesting to see that if Voyager had stuck around and had to make all kinds of adaptations to its living in the Delta Quadrant, but still trying to live up to the ideals. And then like you said, maybe they broker a peace with the Borg, and whatever that peace is might seem almost like sacrilegious to like whatever version. Like now I'm writing this alternate reality show I really like. That like the Federation of like Janeway's Federation way out in the Delta Quadrant later meets up with the real Federation, and they have that same sort of like butting heads. Dude. Have you seen the show The Expanse at all?
No.
It's a show where humans colonize Mars, and then more humans colonize the belt, which is like the asteroid belt. And the three kind of versions of humanity sort of become nations. So Mars, the belt, and Earth are three different nations that sort of emerge as powers in their own right and start to fight, basically. And they're fighting over whatever they can. There's a lot of political strife between Mars and Earth. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, I guess. Like if the Federation had spread out, started a new version of itself, and then later have to have political conflict.
Yeah, dude, like if they made it to where like maybe Hugh got kidnapped and he became part of the Borg again, like proper, or if he just led his Borg people, his what they call what do they call them, XBs, into the Delta Quadrant. If they had like Hugh like not really spread individuality so much as he was spreading like the opiate of the Federation. It started like infecting the Borg and Voyager and like they started like, oh no, like we like this version of things way more. I don't know, man. Like Voyager could have done so much cool stuff.
Yeah, they could have.
And then you got like Janeway worrying if like the Federation is like has the negative effects of religion. Like, oh god, that could have been cool.
Yeah, it could have. I'm curious about that with Discovery, like what they'll do with it, because it does seem like a religion at this point, and we know that in the past Star Trek has not had the shiniest view of religion, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Not in all forms, obviously. Pike's a good Christian man,
and of course, Sisko was the emissary.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What do you think of Saru's command?
I think it's fine. I can't imagine that we're not going to wind up with Michael in charge.
I hope not. I really hope not.
I feel like Saru is the type to be like, you know what? I've led this crew. I've led them to the best of my ability. They need you. They don't need me. Like,
yeah, that's very possible.
That feels like a Saru thing. Like Saru feels more like a guide than he does a captain.
Yeah, his captaining style was interesting. It was definitely not very commanding. It's very much like, what are your ideas? Do that. It was definitely interesting to see him in command in like this very tough situation and try to make the calls he needs to make. And I like how strong he is. He's very strong. He's what the Federation needs to stay the Federation. Because I think Michael, she made the mistake in the very first episode of firing on the Klingons, or trying to. And that in itself is like, that's her original sin, but it's also like her sort of like flaw is that she sometimes is willing to break the Federation rules to do the thing she thinks is expedient, I guess. And Georgiou definitely is that way. She doesn't even care about the Federation. So you've got these sort of three poles of how how to handle this new world. And I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they sort of stir it up in this new world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, the Lower Decks line last season, the very last episode where they're talking about how, the Federation sometimes leaves worlds alone too long. We like don't go back to them like we should. It was interesting.
They went back to Landru.
Yeah. They went back to Landru, and they also dealt with that crew, the crew of that ship that from TNG or whatever, that the scrappers that ended up attacking
the Pockleds. Yeah.
Pockleds, yeah.
Well, the Pockleds had been mentioned in other episodes, and they were a known entity, but in TNG, but Lower Decks all mentioned, they made some comment about another piece of the Action Planet or something, like where a bunch of people are running around as gangsters. It was from an original series.
Right. Well, my point is, they say that about the Federation and how it that's an issue with it, that it doesn't always, it's so big that it can't see all the people sometimes. And that's why they need people like Mariner. I don't know. I guess I just drawing that comparison to this episode where we have this mining colony that still feels like it's the Federation, even though it's been 100 years since they've been visited, Yeah. Which we don't get that, but we get the idea that maybe since the burn, this is one of the things that the Federation has left alone. Very different situation, but I just find it interesting, the question of it's sort of a federalism question. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. So, do you want to get the feedback from last week? Or
yeah. Let's throw some feedback. I have more notes, but we can go. We can do that. No, we can go. We've this has become a long episode, and I did not intend it to be. And we're recording at 5 a.m. We started recording at 5 a.m, so I am. Probably don't need to go through my page of notes that I have left, which is I agree, silly. So well,
now I'm just so curious, though.
Oh, okay. Speed round. No more than 30 seconds on each of these things. Tilly and Saru, father figure, interesting.
Okay, I can deal with that.
She has all of her mother issues, and the way he deals with Tilly seems very interesting. He sees a lot in her. Mm-hmm. I liked all that. I like Giorgio's threat to Zara of decide you're feeling punitive about this settlement. I'll come back and rip your throat out. I found that interesting because I don't feel like Giorgio really has. She's not so far. I don't see her as a Federation officer. She doesn't have the Federation's ideals in mind, but she's still willing to make that threat, which means she has this. I don't know. She's still trying to protect the Federation, even though she's not of the Federation. I found that interesting.
You remember they were like, "Oh, she's helping," and Tig is like, "Yeah, you really think she's helping?" I'm like, ah, shit.
yeah, for sure. That was really good.
She'll do whatever the hell she wants, basically.
Continuing the speed round, I know we don't know what's out there, but we're focused in here, Saru says. Talking about, and I found that an interesting command decision. I also found it kind of short-sighted because clearly they didn't do a good enough job of analyzing the ice. I feel like Saru is making some calls that seem good and he's making strong calls, but some of them are seeming like maybe you do both, yes, we got to save the ship. But also, you got to figure out what threats are at your back. And Giorgio points that out and is very right.
Yes.
The future has a new elemental table? Why?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird. It seems like this is a Federation colony, or it was previously, and now the future has a new elemental table. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
I mean, if they find new elements.
Well, yes, but like this one planet has multiple elements that they can't identify. I found that odd, and maybe it's because this is a different part of space than they have been to in 2260 or whatever.
Yeah,
or 2021, whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah, you got to imagine that, creating programmable matter either means that you found new elements or you created them.
They're talking about mining. There's talk about mining, and they're talking about this element they need that is available on this planet, but a lot of other elements as well, and they have no idea what they are. I found that weird. Oh, although, you know what? Good point. You talk about programmable matter, talk about the future, talk about discovering new elements. They also said that on this planet, because of the polygonal nature of the planet, it looked like it had been designed. Yeah.
Everything is on a cob. Rick and Morty. Y'all watch Rick and Morty.
They play with the idea of like the kind of all worlds theory. It's so good. So good. This is just a line I liked. You have no authority here. The burn is the best thing that ever happened to me, however.
Yeah. Opportunistic shit.
Yeah. In the absence of power, he has become the king of his little hill. Yeah, and the Federation it's similar to what last episode, showing the like result of the Federation missing. This is one result. Last episode we talked about the Endangered Species Act not being upheld. So like this is still showing just like the fallout of what the Federation, the loss of the Federation means to the galaxy.
Yep.
And the last thing we haven't talked about at all, which is kind of a big deal, is Burnham's return.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have any thought that it would be anyone but her.
Same. I was actually would have been surprised if it weren't. Like I was watching the episode and I was like, well, I think it's her, right? Like that's the only thing. And I'm assuming the next episode will show her journey to get here.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Just like last episode, I actually expected them in this episode when I was watching it. They were going to get the comms fixed, right? That's the goal. I expected them to hear her message from last episode when she finally got to use the comms at the end, and then be like, "So she's out there. We can't talk to her yet, but she's out there." But in this, she's just there. We saw in the trailers for this season the events of her like sitting in a shuttle waiting on them. It looked like. Yeah,
I fully expect to see that journey.
Yeah, I mean, we know she has the longer hair at the end of this episode, and the long braided hair. I'm excited to see that episode. This show has got me really excited.
Yeah, I will admit, when she said she's been looking for a year, I was thinking that doesn't seem like this should be long enough. Like, I feel like she should have been like, I've been looking for you for 7 years.
I do think that would have been interesting, but a year is still a while, and I guess they don't want her to look like she aged 10 years or 7 years or whatever.
Yeah, or 3 years. Give me 3.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, did she say she's been waiting on them in that spot? Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out more next episode, because I'm curious if she'd been like waiting for them there for a year, but maybe she like spent 2 years looking around the galaxy for them, trying to figure out where they would come out or whatever, doing the temporal mechanics work of figuring out where they might show up.
Yeah.
Where's Book? What's his situation?
But there's no there's no time travel anymore. So, if, and here's how they'll probably explain it. Zara could tell that it was time travel because of the energy readings he got. I'm sure she's monitoring all the same sectors.
Right. That's interesting.
So if she's been looking for a year, she's probably just been looking for those energy signatures.
That is possible. It did take her a day to get there. For some reason, I was thinking she figured out where they'd be and she's been waiting on them, but that doesn't even make sense, because if that had been the case, she would have been there right when... Of course, they just got the comms working, right? So maybe that's why she could... Well, no, they didn't even get the comms working, did they? They were just like trying to get out of the ice, and then she just showed up and like helped them out of the ice.
They had to have had the comms working to some degree.
Oh, right, because they talked to her.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm a dumbass. Right. Well, I feel like that's all I got to say. That was a good speed round. What we got? What we got going on in the feedback?
All right, over on feedback on YouTube. Dapo Olacian, I'll say.
Yeah. He writes into the MCU cast.
Cool. Says, listening to you right now and wanted to mention my first thoughts when they mentioned the burn. My mind instantly went to the princess and her new process. I felt maybe that is what led to the burn and would explain why not all of the dilithium was gone and maybe just the ones in ships, etc. Just a theory. And likewise, our old friend Jeff Hunt wanted to know where Princess Poe was. If she came along for the ride. And I looked it up, and it said...
I don't think she did.
Yeah, it said that she jumped on a shuttle.
Yeah, that's what I remembered, too. And I was actually really disappointed, because I liked her character, and I thought... Because she was on the ship up until the last second. I was like, oh, cool. She's going to stick around. That's neat.
Yeah.
And then she didn't. And I was like, well, okay.
Yeah, she was on Discovery 12, the shuttle, claiming diplomatic immunity for the theft, and led the charge against Control's drone fleet, giving Discovery and her crew enough time to complete their mission. But here's the thing, Tilly's got all of her info, knows exactly how she was going to recrystallize the dilithium, I bet. And the sphere, all of the knowledge of the sphere, they said in this episode, they reiterated, has been integrated with Discovery's databanks. So they know how to recrystallize dilithium, and I would dare say they're the only ship in the galaxy, or the known galaxy, that knows how to bring it back.
Oh, see, I was assuming that Poe's technology was used throughout Star Trek.
It probably was, but now that we are in this future, whatever this burn was, I'm wondering if it's going to be used to restore it.
Possibly. Tilly will have some interesting insights about dilithium, possibly because of her experience with Poe, but I don't know.
But, original series and the original series movies, they didn't have the capability to recrystallize dilithium. Scotty was shocked and amazed when he got to the Enterprise D and was like, your dilithium's, gonna break down, you're gonna, whatever. And he's like, no, we recrystallize it,
Right. I just assume that's because that technology just hadn't been spread around yet. Because that was the question that Poe had, was I've figured out how to do this thing, but if I do it, it makes my planet worthless.
Right.
And so I think there's probably some political stuff that has to happen, and she has to protect herself and make sure her planet's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But she also cares about her environment. So it's like the politics versus the economics and all that stuff. I just assumed that's because, but it does seem weird that that's 30 years later after the movies, and he's been on the Enterprise B,
yeah.
Why didn't he, why hadn't that technology been incorporated even then? And maybe it has to do with the technology having to expand. Maybe she can do it on a small scale, but on a starship, it's not really possible yet.
I just don't think that they would have introduced the character and then had a whole thing about that, and then not we have all this stuff about dilithium. The burn is directly related to dilithium being worthless now.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
not
it's
worthless.
An easy out,
it seems
man.
Very valuable now.
Dilithium that works. Yes.
Right. So yeah, it's very possible that I don't know. That's it just seems very complex and convoluted to have this character of Poe who wants to recrystallize dilithium to save her environment, but then her recrystallization of dilithium causing all these people's deaths by the dilithium recrystallization. I feel like that's a convoluted and sort of weird moral to try to tell.
To be clear, I don't think that I think, with respect, I think Dapo is wrong. I don't think that she would cause it to happen. I just think her theory is going to be the one that winds up saving humanity, or the Federation. I think, her own the policies and greed weighed down her own planet from, bringing it about, and kept the Federation at bay from being able to use such technology. But I think, it'll be Tilly looks up what happened to her, and it never got off the ground, but by God, we're going to wind up using it here and we're going to save the galaxy. I think that's probably where we'll go with that. Just my theory.
I think it's interesting. I think the fact that you and Dapo and Jeff, like everybody, like connecting those things, I would not have even connected those things. So it's very possible you guys are right, and I think it's a very thoughtful thing. But I as of now, I don't see how that connects. I have a feeling, based on the trailers that they've talked about. They talked about her like search for what happened, what caused the burn, you know? I have a feeling it's not going to be a technology thing. I think it's going to be, or any of that. And I know that's not your theory, but I just think it's going to be some sort of plot. Someone did this, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what she's going to discover.
It's a Romulan cabal.
Right, exactly. If it's a Romulan cabal, I'll be very upset.
And I don't want it to be a Romulan cabal either. But because I know you'll be upset, I'm kind of rooting for it now. I'm just kidding.
I know. All right. Well, thanks for writing in, Dapo. Thanks for writing in, Jeff. That's awesome.
Absolutely, man. And Jeff also had this to say. He says, I really enjoyed the first episode of Discovery. Things were a little extra convenient in short order, but it's a story, not real life, so I can't complain. I really hope that we get some occasional glimpses back, though. A dual storyline where we see 23rd century questions about Discovery and the process of putting it under wraps. Perhaps they'll do that in the Pike series. I like that things are essentially unexplored again because of the lack of communications. I really liked it, though. I just hope it stays connected to the first 2 seasons narratively somehow, and while making use of their newfound freedom, not turning this into a total reboot of the series. I think that they will. I think they'll definitely keep the character development.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it will stay that narratively linked, but I think that it will stay very character linked, clearly.
And I did just recently read that they were saying that she is definitely gonna, like, Spock is going to play into season 3, and Michael is definitely gonna look into, like, what happened to Spock. And and that producer reminded us, we know what happened to Spock. He wound up over in the JJ land, but
but she may never have known that.
Yeah, but she'll be able to look back and see, like, when did he disappear or what happened exactly. And certain elements of Spock's life from the Prime timeline are going to play into, I guess, her decisions and certain elements that of the story that they're telling in season 3.
Huh.
But yeah, I don't think we'll get too much more of, like, the process of them putting Discovery under wraps. They kind of wrapped it up in a nice little bow last season, almost to a fault, or very much to a fault, I feel.
Yeah, but, I think they've done that at this point.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go back to that specifically, but clearly we'll get a lot more Spock on the Strange New Worlds series.
Yeah, and I do think they'll talk about it. You know, they may mention the under wrap stuff, but I do think that the character development from him losing his sister, and even just him seeing. Well, I guess we saw that last season. Him seeing the signal, the last signal, but him losing his sister, I think, will continue to be, something that he's dealing with, and at that point, at least. Yeah,
absolutely. Stu Little. Now, Stu Lethal. I still feel threatened. I haven't said that on this show, but I've said it on DC On Screen. Stu at SL Fricky on Twitter says, I don't think Burnham's a Mary Sue, but them making her the main character has required them to put her in situations and give her talents that other crew members would get in other series, to the supporting cast's detriment, which is why I hope episode 2 is all about them. Well, your wish was granted.
Yeah, it was.
Your wish was granted. But to be fair, as I said last week, I think pretty much every captain, since Shatner demanded to know all the things in Star Trek, like, there was a point, like, in the original series where he was just, like, looking at the scripts going, why do I need him to tell me that? This is a thing Kirk would know. He's the captain. So, like, Yeah, Kirk was the first Star Trek Mary Sue.
So stupid.
Well, he's a dick. But yeah, no, I think she does have, elements of that, but I think that's the same for every lead character in every show. And I honestly think I don't think she is a flawless character. I think she is a very flawed individual, like from the get-go. They're almost like, hey, you should have your own ship. And then, wow, that Vulcan hello did not turn out like she planned. Oh my God, that was a terrible decision. She had every reason to be in jail in the next episode. And I think she's a very flawed character. So yeah, I don't know, but I really liked most of everything that happened with the supporting cast this episode. But I agree, Stamets was not a good storyline. Yeah,
I feel like this episode, I really like what Stu's desire to see more of the crew. I do think that this episode was a little bit of a disservice to most of the crew.
I gotta wonder what's happening to Detmer though. Everybody's like looking at her like she's weird, man.
Yeah, I had that in my notes, but I skipped it because we were running so long. But yeah, Detmer seems like she's really not dealing with this well, but she doesn't have a concussion, so it must be like psychological, I guess.
I don't know, or maybe that implant or something she's got. Like Bethany, my wife, thought it might be some sort of like temporal shifting or something, or like, yeah, I don't know.
So, yeah, the implant could be affecting things that she could be seeing things other people aren't. I just thought it was a psychological issue, but it is Star Trek, so probably not. There's probably something going on.
Yeah. All right. So, Nerdy-tastic over on Twitter says, I finished all of DS9 last week and I've watched all of the good TNG episodes. I tried watching the pilot of Enterprise, but could not make it through. And I'm dubious about Voyager. I also watched all the movies. So now what? Watch Enterprise and Voyager. That's all you. The animated series. Do you have the animated series? I did respond to Nerdy-tastic. I always respond to Nerdy-tastic on Twitter. Love Nerdy-tastic.
Absolutely.
But yeah, like I said, dude, I don't like Voyager. Okay, it's been a good 20 years since I've watched like all of it all the way through. I don't like it, but I know lots of people. That is their shit. That's their Star Trek. They like it more than any other. So, where I see Janeway as an uneven, terrible role model, lots of people find her to be a strong, empowered woman who does all the great things and the best captain. And I just don't get it. But that might be you. You might like it. You might.
Most of the time, it's not Janeway I have a problem with.
Yeah, most of the time, it's just just generally the writing. Yeah.
And I have no problem with Kate Mulgrew for sure. Like, I think she does a great job.
Yeah, she's fun.
But so I will say, and a lot of ladies like that show, particularly because, especially in a formative time in their lives, when they watched it, it was their the first female captain, the first female lead of a Star Trek, and like it is that representation is important. And like I do find a lot of ladies tend to like that show.
And especially when you look at Picard now, like in retrospect, 7 of 9's journey was very, very good.
Yeah, no, 7 of 9. There's a great Steve Shives.
Yes,
Steve Shives on YouTube. I think that's his name on YouTube.
Yes,
great essayist, video essayist of Star Trek, and he has a great one on how great her. Basically, about 4 seasons in, they bring in a new character, and they basically brought her in. It seems like as like sex appeal, but because of their focus on her, she actually ends up being one of the more complex characters over the course of the series. And Steve makes a great point. Great. What's the word? We'll put a link to it in the description of this episode. That YouTube video. You should click on it.
Thanks for giving me an extra chore that I'm not going to remember to do.
I will send it. I'll literally add it to the thing. I'll make it my own responsibility.
The name of that video, I think, is why 7 of 9 is more than just eye candy.
Yeah. And it's true. She really and for the and honestly, I think in some ways it is a detriment to the show because she is such a focus of the last 3 or 4 seasons of the show. I guess
everything was about her or the doctor.
Yeah, they become like the only 2 important crew members, which is, I think, a detriment to the show, but it is makes their characters very interesting and fully fleshed out.
Yeah. It's also not completely true. There's a lot of Tom Paris and B'Elanna stuff in there that was really good. A lot of Tuvok stuff that was solid. You know what? Just watch Voyager, nerdy. Watch Voyager.
DS9's the best. I don't know what else Nerdy Tastic has watched. Has she watched all the new stuff, Picard and things?
I assume. Okay. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. And I actually think Enterprise is better. Enterprise is really good.
I do think Enterprise is really good. Maybe it caught you on a bad day.
I hate the pilot of Enterprise. I hate it with a passion.
But
I really hate it. I think it's really boring. And I feel like it's similar to what I say about some... did I already make this point? I made this point a couple weeks ago, and you disagree with me, but I feel this way
Probably.
about the episode of Enterprise. The first episode, I feel like the first episode of Enterprise is that thing where you're like, I only care about this if I care about Star Trek. You know what I mean?
That was last week. Yeah.
And I think that is the case with that is one of the examples that I have of that phenomenon. And I just really hate, I feel like the first episode of Enterprise is like, if you're shocked there's a Klingon on Earth and you're like, oh my gosh. And the Starfleet is about to go on its first mission. It all feels very like, I don't know. It feels very wanky. Yeah. Wanky is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I know people, I've been a Star Trek fan for a long time, involved in a lot of different communities on the internet here for years and years. I know people, a lot of people, who said, Enterprise was my first. I never watched Star Trek. I like Scott Bakula from Quantum Leap. I watched Enterprise, and it was great. I didn't know any of this stuff, and that's great.
Yeah, sure. I'm not saying it can't be enjoyed. I'm just saying I feel like that first episode is trash. I like some of the characters it establishes. I just don't. I've seen it. Every time I put it on, it feels long. Yeah, it feels long. I feel bored every time I put it on. Mm-hmm. And I think the show is not boring. I think the first season, as most first seasons, is still finding its footing. But I think the second and third season are kind of exceptional.
I feel like the first 2 seasons of Enterprise are basically like, and here we are doing our best impression of TNG and Voyager.
Right. But even that, some overarching plots.
They did have the temporal guy, the future guy. They had the temporal war storyline that they were really... But season 3 is where it gets to, very overarching, they're flying into the expanse. That was the area of space where physics didn't make sense. And they were looking for the Xindi because there was a terrorist attack. It became very 9/11, very, let's go hunt for these bastards who... committed this terrorist attack on Earth, and kind of dug into who we were as a nation at that time, and did a really fantastic job of that, and showcasing the hypocrisies and the dark paths that we as humans are want to wander down.
Yeah, I mean, it really is it is pre-Federation. It is Starfleet, but it's pre-Federation, and the idea, all the ideals of it is that show establishes the ideals of the Federation.
Yeah,
it's great. I really love it. Enterprise.
Yeah, Enterprise winds up being really solid if you give it a shot. And season 4, smaller arcs with a larger through line, but very, very heavy into connections to TOS, heavy in connections to TNG. Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens come on board. Manny Koto comes on board. You have so much good writing on season 4 of Enterprise, where you get Through a Mirror Darkly. You get the Mirror Universe episodes of Enterprise that tie into TOS episodes. Dude, check out Enterprise.
It's pretty great.
Seriously,
it really is pretty great.
And lastly, Samira L on YouTube says, I need a boyfriend, kissy face, kissy face, kissy face, kissy face, kissy face, kissy face,
what is up with that YouTube, man? I've been getting those. I got one last week on one of my videos that was like, it was just like, I need your love. Or something like that. I was like, what?
Yeah. I actually responded to her and I said, she said, I need boyfriend, all these emojis, kissy faces. And I just said, I seriously doubt it.
Yeah. I think I said, thank you.
I should not have taken a drink. Oh gosh.
Responding to porn bots.
Yep.
Well, guys, that is it for our podcast tonight. A much longer episode than I was intending. I was like, well, we'll get on here and talk for 30 minutes about Discovery. And then we got, as we do, way deeper. Well, guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Much love, and hopefully we'll be back here next week with lots more talk about Discovery episode 3. I'm really excited about it. Jolan True.
I just don't buy it when you say Jolan True anymore because you don't like Romulan cabals.
I don't like the cabals, but I like the Romulan people. It's not Romulan people, it's their culture that I don't like.
That's some racist shit, man. Live long and prosper, you bastard.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.